Hello, hello. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to wish you a massive congratulations on your Playbook purchase. You've just unlocked some of the most powerful questions to drive more sales in your business. And if you're a salesperson, how to create more commission. And so, what we're going to do over the next 5 days is we're going to take you through something called a sales fast track. What that means is I'm going to be delivering a valuable piece of content to your inbox across the next 5 days that'll help you leverage your Playbook investment so you can get the most out of it and the questions as much as possible. So we do that because I don't want this $12 playbook to just sit in your inbox and for you to never open it. I would love for you to be one of the people that messages me and says, Caleb, we just used like a couple of the questions of the playbook and we closed a deal. This is crazy. Like, why is it this easy? Because the playbook is really effective and I would love for you to use it. So that being said, here's just a quick overview of what we're going to do over the next 5 days. So today we're going to be talking about some of the critical ways that sales has changed and what we need to do and adapt to be able to make sales. The second thing we're going to cover is some sales psychology. So what needs to happen in our buyer's brain in order for them to actually make that purchasing decision with us. Day 3, we're going to be talking about objections. What can we do to deal with objections and how can we overcome them on like a base level? And then the next day, the day after that, we're going to talk about how to actually close the sale, right? So what do we need to do in order to get the person to open up their wallet and actually swipe their credit card and say, yes, I'm in, rather than, maybe I need to think about it. I need to call Gary. Who the hell's Gary? Do you know what I mean? Like, or if they genuinely need time, let's give them some time, which brings us into day 5. We're going to talk about how do we adapt our sales process to the different types of people that we encounter. Are there some people that genuinely need time, or are there some people that actually need to make a decision on the spot? And I'll give you a clue. There's actually 4 different types of buyers. So we're going to give you a little bit of an introduction into some of the human behavior side of things. So that should give you a really, really fast track to making more sales. And when we've run things like this previously, a sales challenge that I've run in the past, 9 out of 14 participants made a sale within the first 7 days. So I just want you to imagine for a second, if you make a sale of a premium product, or if you're a commission-based person, one additional sale, what's that worth to you? Whatever that's worth is probably worth doing this 5 days so that you can actually drive that extra sale, make that additional revenue. And there's no reason why you couldn't go back and listen to these 5 days and do it again. So that's the premise behind what we're doing. The reason why we do this is because we know that there's some people that just want the information. They just want to learn. They want to self-pace. They want to go by themselves. However, there's some other people that like to go a little bit faster. And so where we provide additional service is not for the content itself. It's just for the implementation. So if you actually want some help from me personally to look over your sales with my eyes and ears, you want me to listen to some of your sales calls and help you write some scripts and overcome some objections, that kind of thing. If you want that personalization and that coaching, because you're the kind of person that learns best in that kind of dynamic, that's what we have our sales accelerator for. Now, you don't have to get that as part of your playbook. This is simply just saying that there is the self-paced learning, which you have access to now, and the next 5 days will give you everything you need. We don't do that weird marketing thing where we like break off some stuff for the paid high ticket people and you get some of the scraps here. No, everything you need for the playbook, all the questions will be here. So if you did invest in this, it would be worth your time. But we just know that there's some people that do like a little bit of extra touch, high touch and support. And that's what that community is for. We open and close that community just based on how many people in there and the level of support, because the last thing I'd want you to do is to come in and feel like your questions aren't answered. So that's why we just have an open and close door policy. So if you would like to know more details about that, simply flick us an email at sales@caleblassard.com or click one of the links below or reply to any one of our emails with Accelerator and I'll send you across the details. You can jump on the wait list and as soon as that opens up again, you'll be able to join us. So without further ado, let's stick into the next 5 days. I'm going to introduce you to a little bit about my story and how I got here, then we'll get into the content. So who am I? Hi, I'm Caleb Lassard, and I used to be terrible at sales. Well, not terrible exactly, but I was definitely doing it the hard way. See, most people think there's only 2 types of salespeople in this world. One, the pushy, aggressive, alpha bro sales guys you've probably met. They make everyone uncomfortable. Or the nice guys, the ones that don't really ask for the sale. And I spent years believing I had to pick a side. Back in 2011, I actually wanted to be a radio DJ. You might be hearing that now in my voice. I know it's not the traditional path to sales success, I was studying at the New Zealand Broadcasting School, dreaming of late night shows and talking for a living. Welcome to the Late Night Show with Caleb Lazar. Then I actually met this guy called Jack Klutz, and Jack had this incredible presence about him. He was like the walking, talking embodiment of how to win friends and influence people. And when I told him my 5-year plan, house, kids, wife, yes, I was a very boring 19-year-old. He looked me straight in the eye and said, Caleb, that won't happen as a radio DJ. You simply won't make enough money. Honestly, I was pretty defeated. I was pretty gutted when he said that. He then said, look, why was it sales? And I said, I just wanted to talk for a living. And he goes, okay, come shadow me for a day tomorrow. Meet me here at 8:15, dress sharp and wear your best suit. Problem? I was 19. I didn't own a suit. So I blew my tiny student budget on a $99 suit and showed up the next morning, which was the day that changed everything. Jack took me to meeting after meeting where he would go in selling radio advertising. But here's what struck me. It didn't feel like selling at all. Not the selling that I knew. It felt like conversations, natural, comfortable, where people actually wanted to work with him. They respected him. They trusted his judgment. After each meeting, he'd break down what happened and why, and I was absolutely hooked. Fast forward to my first real sales job, reality hit really hard. Picture this. I'm walking into the elevator on the first day, feeling pretty good and chuffed about myself, right? Young 20-year-old ready to take on the world. And I bumped into this lady, let's call her Chevron. She was a big, burly woman with crocodile skin, the kind of skin that had seen too much tanning beds, and she smelled like coffee and cigarettes. She had this really weird Brooklyn, I think, accent where she would go, hello, love, you must be the fresh meat. And I was so scared, to be honest. But she became the most influential person in my sales journey, but not for the reason that you would expect. That first day, I actually watched Chevron berate a prospect over the phone, calling him names, telling him that she'd drive down there and force him to buy because he's stupid not to. I was shell-shocked. I was looking around the room going, is this considered normal? And it was in that moment I made a promise to myself. I would never sell in a way that would make prospects feel uncomfortable, pressured, or icky. I would find a way to be a top performer without resorting to those pushy, pitch-based tactics. And you know what? By the end of that year, I'd become the top new business rep in the entire region. But even though I was winning, something still felt off. I had devoured every sales book I could find, from Jordan Belfort to Mandino to Ziegler to Cardone. They were all so still direct, so push. I knew there had to be a better way. By 2016, I was working with another aggressive colleague. Let's call her Chevron 2.0, who was telling everyone I wasn't cut out for sales. The worst part, she was right. My numbers weren't actually backing up her claim. My relationship style of selling needed more time to develop. And the company I was in demanded a hard close, a hard pick. I felt like this square peg in this round hole. Maybe I'm not cut out for sales. But that's when I met my second sales mentor, Darcy, and everything clicked. Now, Darcy's approach to selling made sense. It made pure sense. It wasn't about pitching or convincing or battling and overcoming objections. It was about having a genuine conversation that naturally led to sales. So I decided I was going to go all in. Over the next 9 months, I was having 3 to 4 meetings a day in my current job. And in every one of those meetings, I was using his process. Then I would sit in my car afterwards and I would text him, getting feedback and refining my approach every time. Slowly but steadily, I climbed the ranks. My relationship-focused selling was finally paying off. So why am I telling you this? Here's what I learned through all of this. You don't have to choose between being pushy and pull. There's a third option, being genuinely helpful, building relationships, and making more sales than the hard closers ever dreamed of. That's around this time is when I started taking on clients on the side. And I wanted to share what I'd learned. I just felt like I'd struck gold and I found this incredible thing that I wanted to share with everyone. And one of my very first clients was a digital marketer from a very successful agency in Australia. And when we met, he was doing about $77,000 a month, selling a $10,000 product. So he was closing around 7 deals a month, had a 7% conversion ratio. After we deployed our system for just 30 days, he grew his revenue from $77,000 to $352,000 in just 30 days. His conversion ratio went from 7% to 32%. After that, I thought, well, this is even better. Let's start sharing this with the public. So I started running workshops in the weekends and I would share this information and prospects would leave and then they would go make sales within days of getting the information. And that's when I knew I had something really special. This was the birth of what I now call the consult method. It's the same system I'm going to share with you today. So fast forward to 2025, the consult method has been responsible for millions of dollars in deals across dozens of different industries. It works in B2B and B2C because it's rooted in human behavior and timeless persuasion principles. And it's created results like this. One of my high ticket closing clients reached 46% conversion rate on the offer that he was on. My 3D artist coach closed a 3K deal within 24 hours of using our system. An education consultant closed a $2,000 deposit on their $10,000 program. A speaking coach made 2 sales within 24 hours of learning our method. A tax consultant reached $45,000 in sales in their first month. A personal trainer finally learned how to prevent objections for the very first time. And a dating consultant got his first $3,000 pay in full for the very first time. And it's really important to mention here that by no means are we making any income claims about your ability to make these levels of income. What I'm saying is we're passing down the lessons from working with clients into a course that you can consume. And here's what makes it different to everything else out there. This process is not a hard sell. It's permission-based. Your prospects actually want to be in this conversation with you. It's curiosity and people-driven. So instead of pitching and hard closing people, we're curious about what their actual needs are. We're building relationships, which brings us to our last point. It is relationship focused. We're focused on building trust, not trying to battle them or twist their arm or hard sell them into something. So this isn't just another course filled with scripts and tactics that make you sound like every other person. This is the complete system that teaches you how to take curious prospects and turn them into high-paying premium clients through natural and comfortable conversations. So here's my promise to you. Over the next few days, I'm going to share with you the exact people-focused, permission-based sales process that's generated millions of dollars in revenue across dozens of industries. You're going to learn exactly how to turn curious prospects into high-paying clients without ever feeling pushy or aggressive. Because here's what I believe. Sales should feel good for everyone involved. Your prospects should thank you for the conversation. They should feel heard, understood, and excited to work with. And you should feel proud of how you conduct yourself in sales and business. So are you ready to discover how the best people actually sell? Then let's dive in to day one. All right, welcome to day one. How sales has changed and exactly what we need to do about it in order to make more sales in 2025 and beyond. So the first thing I want to talk about here is transactional versus relationship selling. And I think we've probably all had that terrible sales experience where the person has been pushy, overzealous, just trying to convince you of stuff. You've never really felt heard or understood, and it just felt gross. And then at the end of the call, they've told you that you should buy, right? We all have that really bad experience, and I'm sorry that it happened to you. It will not happen here. And what we do is we call this transactional selling versus relationship selling, which is, it is this high pressure alpha bro, like one call closing people, 25-year-old influencer on YouTube, weird stuff going on where it assumes a one size fits all to selling. There's no real understanding that people have nuance. There's no relationship building. It's sales focused first. And so one of my mentors used to share this quote, and she would say, a sale can exist within a relationship, but a relationship cannot exist within the sale. So what she meant by that was, if you're focused on just the sale, it's very hard to have that connection, that relationship. If you focus on the relationship, you've always got an opportunity to make the sale, which is the big principle behind what we do here with the playbook and our method. And so the second thing is understanding that this high pressure type selling is just not really effective. And it's very short term in its thinking. And I have many beefs with it, right? Like I've seen these videos on YouTube. You've probably seen them too. They pop up all the time. And it's like how to handle the partner objection. And they do this really weird kind of like, does your partner, like heavy is the crown? Whose responsibility is it to make the decisions and provide for the family? And it's like, that's such a weird thing to do to someone, because any kind of adult, so anyone that's not a child when it comes to selling, if they're married, chances are you respect your wife enough to make decisions together as a team. So why is some salesperson saying that you become less of a man or, less of a woman if you chat with your partner about a decision that you often make together? the presupposition is so weird, but that's that transactional mentality, which is like, I need to isolate you and trick you with my, linguistic tongue tie ability to get you to make a say. It's just gross, right? And it's super short term thinking. And I personally think, like, if anyone did that to me, I'd be furious. Right? My wife and I are a team. We run our household as a team. Our life is a team. And like, just because you want to make the sale doesn't mean that she needs to show up. And that's the other weird thing that they do. I know if you had this. It's like, is anyone else involved in the decision-making process? Could we get them on the call too? No, shut up. My wife is looking after my newborn right now. Like, why are you telling? Like, it's just so strange. Like, if we just step out for a minute and we just look at it, it's such a weird level of entitlement and strangeness that is happening in our industry. And if you're like me, you probably think that's hopefully you think that's weird. If you think that's interesting, we're probably going to clash a little bit over the next 5 days. So I'm sorry, but not sorry, I think the other thing that's really important to keep in mind here is this high pressure selling, transactional rather than relational selling, is you're burning something called pipeline equity. So basically, pipeline equity is the relationship capital that you have with the connections that you've created. So whenever I was selling, I would always focus on making sure that I understood their needs and build the relationship, and that I would trust my sales process was strong enough, my discovery, my relationship was strong enough, so that I played the long game, that relationship capital and equity, that pipeline equity as well, would support me later down the road. Now, that requires me to be more trusting in my ability, right? That I've done a good job, that I've built relationship, that I've got good follow-up, etc. But that, for me, has always been more effective. And this brings us to our second point, is the difference between convincing versus inviting. And you would think that this is kind of common sense, but it's so strange that this is ignored. The fastest way to be non-persuasive is to convince someone of something. So the reason why that's the case is because we all have this degree of bullshit / mismatcher in our head that is disagreeing. Even as I share this stuff with you, there'll be a little part of the back head that's going, this is bullshit. Who the hell's this guy? Like, this is rubbish. I don't believe. And it's got varying degrees in the different personalities, which we're going to talk about probably on day 5, where they have this different level of like, that's bullshit, I don't believe, etc. And so when we directly say to someone that you need to do this, there's a part of them that just doesn't like being told what to do. It's stronger in others and less strong in others. So telling people what they should do is the least persuasive way to sell. And what I want you to imagine is, like, when we're selling, imagine your prospect is on one side of the room and we're on the other side of the room. The more we tell them what they need to do, the more distance we create. The more that they tell us what they want, what problems that they have, the closer they move towards us. And so what we're looking to do is we're looking to get closer and closer and closer to each other, to eventually stand side by side, to be next to each other. And it's so much better than trying to force feed people beliefs, like, it's just, there's a much more graceful way to do high level sales if you really understand how to sell properly. You're not just modeling some intuitive closer who just knows what to say, because that's the other thing that we've seen in the trainings out there at the moment as well. It's like they just expect you to understand what you should say, right? Rather than giving you a framework or an understanding of what is the psychology that drives a sale. That brings us to our third thing, which is sales is ultimately about leadership. So what I mean by that specifically is a couple of concepts. The first one is great leaders are empathetic and curious, but they also have boundaries and integrity. So let's just break that down, because there was quite a bit, right? So great leaders are curious. So one of the superpowers that you can have in your sales conversations is to be really, really curious. And we're going to talk about this as a questioning technique, which is something called defined terms, which I'll talk about in further down the track, and probably tomorrow, actually. And so what curiosity does is curiosity takes you from the focus on yourself to the focus on someone else. So you can't at the same time be scared of selling or feel weird about selling if you are genuinely curious about the person that's in front of you. So what I mean specifically is, most people, when they jump on the sales call, they jump into, how do I get the sale? right? How do I get the sale from this person? As opposed to, I wonder what problems that they have that I could elicit. And so when sales is leadership, a great leader is able to be curious first and non-reactive. And what that leader is curious about is, what is this person's specific set of problems? What is going on for them without me needing to rush them and push them in any direction? And this is what we see with traditional sales or transactional selling, is the curiosity is not there. It's kind of like a pseudo curiosity. Like, it's curious because I'm trying to figure out how to make you buy from me rather than this, like, if you imagine the discovery process needs to be completely detached from the closing process. And I'll teach you this in day 3, I believe, how we keep these processes separate. And so the first thing is curiosity. Can we turn up the curiosity? If we do turn up the curiosity, we're more into other people than we are into ourselves. We're actually going to build rapport, even deeper rapport, which we'll talk about a little bit later as well in today's video. And so after curiosity would be integrity and congruence. And this is maybe more of a soft skill when it comes to sales, but this is something that I see violated all the time, right? Where we might say, oh man, I wish people invested in my goods and services, right? But then at the same time, we never invest in ourselves. And I know I'd be guilty of this too, right? Where it's like, why are people paying me? It's like, well, when's the last time that I actually went through what that person's going through? So if someone is buying a high ticket service, like $5,000, $10,000, there's a lot of fear that's going on there, right? There's a lot of belief or leaps of faith that they have to take. So have we done that as well? Like, are we asking someone to do something that we're not ready to do ourselves? And let's, that's really high level. Let's bring that down to a base level, right? Do we complain when people ghost us, right? There's, prospects ghosting us, not coming back to us. But then I look at, specific people that complain about these problems, and then they ghost other people, right? They don't have the capacity to just turn around and say, no, I don't want to do that. No, thank you. And so it's looking at these little inconsistencies in the way that we are as people, as we show up as leaders, in our congruence and our integrity, to make sure that we're the same across the board. Because the way that we do the small things is the way that we do the big things. We can't ask of other people something that we're not willing to do of ourselves if we want to keep that integrity piece intact. And that integrity piece is not something that we can fake. It's either there and we feel it, or it's not. So the last thing about sales as leadership is, when most people think about sales, either consciously or subconsciously, they kind of see it as a zero-sum game. So what I mean by that is, zero-sum game is where everybody loses in that game. There's zero, everything zeroes out. And so what that typically looks like for the clients that I coach is, they believe that there is a loss happening because they're taking money from the prospect, and they believe that that is a net negative. So it's a zero sum, like there's no benefit there, as opposed to being able to shift that zero-sum game ideology and see, like, okay, if I'm selling something that is genuinely helpful and will genuinely help my prospect, then perhaps that is a net positive for them. And then I'm not taking money, I'm allowing myself to receive money for the services that I'm providing. And the reason why I say zero-sum game is, most people's unconscious bias is that sales is a net negative, like I'm doing something negative. But what I would like you to sort of integrate through this piece is understanding that sales is ultimately leadership. And it's ultimately broken up into 2 parts, the discovery part and then the closing or the invitation part, which is why we call this convincing people versus inviting people. Instead of forcing people to adopt a belief that we have and having to join, it's kind of like, where you get flagged down from like what do you call I'm sorry, I'm calling you out, guys, but like the donation people who are, or the people that knock on your door, right? It's like heavy convincing style, as opposed to the opposite of that, which is consultative style, which is invitation, which is, what are the problems that you're experiencing? Tell me about them. Okay, cool. Here's the solution. This is how I believe we can solve them. Would you like to work together to solve those problems? And so this is this key difference here. This is what sales leadership is. This is what the convincing versus inviting is. And also the zero-sum game is believing that it's not a lose-lose, because when you sell in a consultative way, like a trusted advisor, when you sell like that, you actually sell in a way that is a net positive. Because when we start talking about what is a sale is really a decision that needs to be made, right? It's a gap between where somebody is now and where they expected they would be by that. I'm just going to keep that definition very vague, because we're going to cover that tomorrow. But it becomes a net positive, because if you can separate the need to close someone from discovery by actually asking them questions on their situation to get them clear on what's going on, you're actually doing them a favor, right? If we separate the two, so if we see the sales conversation as a service, as leadership, because we're just helping them get clear on their current situation, and I'm detached from the sale, that is actually a service. That's where people actually thank you, which is, if we get into what sales really is, or what it should be, is it's revealing the prospect's actual problem, not what we believe the solution should be. So what I mean by that is, when we sell, we are asking people, what is going on for you? And we're truly looking and listening and understanding. What are the problems that you are experiencing? What are the expectations that you thought that you would have? What does that gap look like for you, completely detached? If we do this well, that proper discovery is actually a service, in the sense that it helps clarify decision making. Because ultimately what we're looking at here, when we understand what a sale is a sale is a decision. It's a problem which is split between what someone's experiencing now and where they expected that they thought that they would be by now. So I'll say that again because that was a mouthful. What a sale really is the gap between what someone is experiencing now versus where they thought that they would be by now. And we're going to dive into this much deeper tomorrow, but that's just the general overview. The other thing is, when we sell like this, we sell with leadership and we sell with invitation, the sales end on thank you. They actually feel good. They feel uplifting. There's no anxiousness. There's no buyer's we right? Like when we have this hard sell convincing, a lot of these people just feel terrible about the purchase. And then they have buyer's remorse, and then they go to justify it. And then it actually creates the types of clients that I call followers versus leaders. So if we have to heavily convince someone, say with a guarantee, like you're going to make your money back, absolutely. And I'm not talking for like low ticket products, right? But I'm talking for like high ticket, like 5, 10, 20,000. If they buy because of the guarantee, right? Like, we'll work with you for free until you do. They're not making a decision for themselves. They're buying because of the guarantee. So what that translates to is a potential prospect or a person who doesn't back their own decision making. They only bought because you told them that the guarantee would protect them from failure. Whereas how we want prospects to behave is, here's the potential for failure. It's actually moderately high, right? This is what's the worst case scenario. Well, the worst case scenario is you could spend $5,000, you could not have anything happen. Okay, so you need to think about, are you okay? And can you handle that worst case scenario? Well, yeah, I mean, it would suck, it'd be bad, but I could probably handle it. Fantastic. So what's the medium case scenario? Maybe you join the program, you make a couple of sales, etc. You make your money back. Great. What's the best case scenario? Right? Blah, blah, blah. I make 10x my investment. Fantastic. So real sales is about hiding nothing and explaining everything while empowering our prospects to become leaders, people who understand the risks, but they trust themselves enough to handle it. Which is, if we sell with guarantees, we end up creating followers, people who need the guarantee. They can't think for themselves. So they make bad clients. They don't do the work. They blame you. And then, you have to give them refunds, all that kind of stuff, because you said you would, and then it gets messy and all this kind of crap, right? So let's talk about the last thing here, because I don't want these videos to be too long, but I just want to install these sort of like the ways to think about selling and how it's different and how it's changed and why the old way just is gross. And it's almost like a walking contradiction now. Right? Like, I'm really surprised that there are not more lawsuits. There's not more people just feeling really grossed out by it. And that it's being celebrated in this way that just feels yucky. Anyway, so how to create rapport? What's the definition of rapport? So the best definition of rapport we can have is a state of trust and responsiveness. Now, we borrow this from the world of NLP, where trust and responsiveness is where your thoughts or your words become your prospect's thoughts. So what we mean by that is we can start seeing, physically they're mirroring us, but also we're in enough rapport that we can actually help. We're listening to them enough through our active listening that we can help put words to problems that they have that they couldn't language themselves. So I'll say that again because that's a little bit high level, but where rapport can really come from is if we know our prospect's problem well enough, and we're able to put words and descriptions and understanding to it for them, we can language it for them when they couldn't language it for themselves, they will associate trust and expertise. So part of being a really great salesperson is understanding the problem that you solve for your market really well, and then be able to label that for your prospects and say, this is most likely what you're experiencing. Does that sound familiar? And they go, wow, yeah. And when you do that, you get the trust, you get the authority, you get the responsiveness that makes them internally go, wow, I feel understood by this person. I trust this person. I'm going to listen to this person, right? And so that's when they become responsive, right? They're not closed off anymore because you're able to actually language what it is that they're experiencing. Your words become their thoughts. So the second part of that is we can't have rapport and we can't have trust and responsiveness if we're pretending to be someone we're not. So if we're putting on this persona of like, I need to be this alpha bro closer, like, yeah, man, just buy the thing and do the blah and don't talk to your what, like, I've seen this happen where I've been speaking to a prospect, I listen to their call, and then they jump on the sales call and then they become somebody else, right? They become the 1980s car salesman, or they do the weird sing-songy voice where it's like, hello, how, like, it's this, I don't know, it's this weird thing. And we learned this in radio, which you'll hear about my story sort of in a moment. But in radio, one of the biggest things was you didn't have a radio voice. You're not supposed to have a, hi, it's Caleb here from 97.4. But coming up next is you're not supposed to do that, right? Because it feels inauthentic and it feels kind of gross. And so if you used to speak to me normally, this should be how I sound, right? It might sound a little bit different because we've got a little bit of reverb going on, etc., blah, blah, blah. But this should be how I sound. And so, yeah, that's the next piece, right? Is you want to be yourself. So this was day one. Day two, tomorrow, we're going to be covering a little bit about the psychology of closing and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, hopefully this was super valuable. If you could, in our support group, just jump in and just say, hey, my day one learnings were ABC. The reason why we do that is because if you share what you're learning or what was great for you, you can even just reply to this email, just tell me what it was. You'll lock it in, right? So think about, what were your 3 or 4 takeaways today? What selling really is, how to create rapport, sales is leadership, convincing versus inviting, transactional selling versus relational selling. I trust this was super valuable. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and we'll speak soon.